Over the past 2 years, I've seen two types of tenants. Number one, the first group, they leave as soon as their first year is over. Their lease agreement finishes, they're out the door, no questions asked. That's group number one. Then there is group number two. They stay longer for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. And I've always thought, what made them different? Now, when you think about it, renting or moving into a place is not a short-term decision. People think far ahead that, hey, I'm going to be staying here for a while. At least the document or the agreement that we're signing is only for a year, but I'm thinking we probably might stay longer. And the decision that they make to move out of the place as soon as the lease is over is not because of what you're probably thinking. So we've been managing rental properties for about 3 years right now, and then had a lot of move-ins, move-outs. So I had a tangible amount of data to sit down and think, what keeps tenants longer in a rental property? Now, I came to the conclusion that the very first step that we have to do to make sure we have the retention that we need in place is that we start really carefully. Meaning the tenants that we bring in, we have to make sure they are the right tenant for the property. That is step number one. Wherever I rushed the process, whenever I cut corners, making sure, hey, you don't have that paper, I'm gonna let you slip. Or when I said, you know what, my gut feeling tells you're pretty okay, but your documents say otherwise, but I still said yes. These are the instances where either of us, either it's me or them, we wait for the mark to hit the 1 year so that we can just get rid of them, or they just can't leave. So I feel that none of this would have happened if we just made sure that the tenant that we got into the first place was properly vetted, was properly verified. Their documents, the feeling that you get when you talk with them. Never trust your instinct. When you do that, stuff goes south. Number two, maintenance requests are a big thing. Once you have a really proper move-in sequence in place, making sure that before even the tenants move in, we have 90% of the problems sorted, so that you can not have these calls early on during the tenancy. Even then, little things like maybe a bulb got shorted, maybe a fuse got fused. Maybe they don't know where the main shut-off valve for the water is. These calls, if you just answer them, I feel if we just act on time, 1 or 2 times a month, the max, the idea that they get that the landlord or the property manager is actually responsive does wonders. And the relationship that built in terms of when that happens, and then that becomes the reason for them to stay another year or another year. Now, evidently, what you want to have is that you have to make the pain of moving from there way higher than the pain of staying there. We can accomplish that in 2 ways. One, make the pain of leaving super hard. And I'm not saying in a very dark way. I'm saying it in a legitimate way, so we can induce into rental properties that will not cost us a lot, but will have a greater return on the time spent. Now, another thing that I've always thought about was making the tenants feel seen. Now, that is a big deal. A lot of the times tenants send you a request, they're just a number in your system, and you treat them like you're a pain. And that kind of reflects on towards the tenants, and that affects retention, and that affects the idea or the thought process that the tenant might be having in terms of finding another property. Now, finding a different home when you have family or even your roommates, you want the same kind of roommates when you move out in a different property. It takes a lot of preparation. People start to check out. It's almost like a breakup. It doesn't happen overnight. It just builds up, and the resentment one day breaks. That's how breakups happen, and that's how tenants decide to leave to another house. Plus, there are external factors like maybe a job change happened, maybe they want to move closer with their parents or family. Now that makes sense, but these are rare case scenarios that really don't come into play that often. Another thing that we have to keep in mind is that we have to give reasons. We have to give them reasons to stay. Everybody acts in their own self-interest. That's what I learned. So as tenants, they want reasons so that they can stay. And now Not increasing the rent is not possible every time because of the mortgage rates that are going up, taxes that's going up. But there are things that you probably can do, like maybe throwing in a set of Wi-Fi there, a few dongles here and there, extend their routers so that they get more stronger connection in their bedroom. Very simple addition. Now, that might not seem like a lot, but then when you think about in a longer horizon, if you built all these goodwill with the landlord or the property manager, you're giving something on top of that, that adds up. Taking care of the lawn or the snow. Now, these are expenses. It is way, way better than keeping the same paying tenant for a longer period of time than having to find a different tenant every year. It is so painful. You have to do the move-in, move-outs again. You have to pay the tenant placement fees again. You have to do the vetting and all those processes all over again. You're gambling again. That's the hardest part. You're just gambling again when you have a good bet on your hand. And after that, ever since a couple of incidents happened, I've moved all my attention to protecting the tenants that we have. Make sure that they doesn't go to another property just because we didn't take enough care. That was my experience in managing rental properties. I've not been doing this for a long time. It's only been 2 years. We probably manage about 5 properties. About a few of them are systems only. They use our platform and we are not involved in the day-to-day, day or night. Any day. The only thing that matters is retention, because as we move into in 2026, 2027, the options that tenants are going to have is just going to increase. More supply is going to come into play, which means demand will come down. When that happens, the only way this is a fair game is by making sure that we pay attention to the tenants that we have.